I want to answer two very commonly asked questions today. First, how effective the first dose of COVID vaccine is, and how dosing interval affect vaccine efficacy. In today's video, I'm going to present you the data of AstraZeneca and its efficacy. This paper was published on The Lancet. It's talking about single-dose administration and the influence of the timing of the boost dose, which is those two questions I mentioned early on. So if you are curious about those two, stick with me. By the way, if you would like to receive more COVID-related content, don't forget to subscribe this channel. Alright, so this research is a very big research. It's basically like AstraZeneca study. So they conclude a lot of things across many different participants. And there are in total 24,422 participants across 4 different studies. A very huge amount of data. And their first result for the prime shot, which is first shot, and the booster shot, which is second shot, the interval, they found out if the interval is too short, the vaccine efficacy won't be too high. For example, if your interval is just less than 6 weeks, which is 1.5 months around that time, your efficacy of AstraZeneca vaccines against the COVID-19 is just 55%. And if you increase the interval, in this case, greater or equals to 12 weeks, which is around more than 3 months, and the vaccine efficacy actually jumps a lot. It's 81%, over 81%. So 81 versus 55, that's a huge difference. So let's just see the breakdown here. The breakdown here is, so this is, before we dive in, we just look at the very famous studies also included in this paper, which is, I give you your first shot, which with a lower amount of the vaccine, and the second shot with standard amount, which is higher. So it's lower dose, higher dose, and this kind of a 2 ways, different dosing strategy. And you can find out if you just give the same amount of shots in first and second shot, the efficacy is 63, but if you give one participant a lower amount in the first dose and higher in the second, and you can boost the efficacy of the vaccine to 80%. So that's a huge jump. So this is just a little bit tangent. So let's just look into our data. This data is the dosing interval versus vaccine efficacy. So I will just let's just look at these data. If participants receive two standard shots, you can see the efficacy originally, if you receive the interval is less than 6 weeks, it's 55. And if it's 6 to 8 weeks, increase to almost 60. And if it's 9 to 11 weeks, increase almost 4% to 63%. It gets better if you receive your second shot 12 weeks later, or even more than 12 weeks later than your first shot. The efficacy of the vaccine is 81%. So they kind of increase really proportionally to the interval. So that's very, very interesting finding. And also there's also another breakdown is for 2 standard shots over low dose plus standard shots. So it's include more data. You can see the same thing. The efficacy increase when the time interval increase, especially if it's over 12 weeks. It just jumps significantly. So from 6 weeks to 8 weeks, 11 weeks, you increase 2-3. So from 6 weeks to 8 weeks, 11 weeks, you increase 2 or 3 weeks each time. The efficacy just jump 4%. The magic happens when you increase the dosing interval from 11 weeks to over 12 weeks. This 2 weeks increase, 1 or 2 weeks increase. The magic happens. The efficacy just increase. The efficacy just increase over 16%. That's a big jump. That's a really big jump. And in this data, you plus 2 standard dose or low dose plus standard dose, it's also increased almost 8%. So that's a really significant jump, which we don't really know why. I think that's very hard to explain, but that's a very interesting immune response that we find out. Actually, longer the dosing interval, the better. But in this case, it's like over 12 weeks maybe maximum is 16 weeks. Over that length of time, maybe it will not get better. We don't know. We don't have data yet. Okay, so that's a tremendous, like, eye-opening finding. And this is the graph. I think this you can see even better in this graph. From 36 days to 112 days, you can see how the efficacy change, the interval, when interval change. This is the dosing interval. And you can see the efficacy, if your interval is low, the efficacy will start from very low point. And when the interval just increase, the vaccine efficacy starts increasing really drastically. Even you can see there's an interval for 4 months, which is 112 days, and the efficacy is even higher. It's much higher than 80%. So that's a great finding. At least they can give us more hints in how we should allocate the vaccine dosing interval. And so far, it looks like the UK strategy, which is long interval, it's like 4 month interval, it's actually quite reasonable, and it's not only increase the coverage of the first dose of vaccines as fast as possible, but also increase the vaccine efficacy overall. By the way, this efficacy of the vaccine, AZ vaccine, is measured 2 weeks after the second dose. So it's the fully vaccinated people's vaccine efficacy. And if we look at the single dose data, which is after you receive your single dose, and this data shows you how much efficacy change over time. And this started from 22 days. So 22 to 30 days, your efficacy remains quite high, 76. And over time, still within 90 days, it still remains very high, over 70, which is very tremendous. And this is like the efficacy for symptomatic COVID. It did not include asymptomatic. This is what we care, the symptomatic infections, and it's over 70. So that's very, very good result. But the catch is over 91 days, the efficacy starts to decline. It will drop to just like 31%, which is very low. So it tells us even your dosing interval is long, I mean, usually the longer, even to 112 days, 4 months, then you can have a very good efficacy after the second dose. So the problem here we see is even like the dosing interval to 4 months is very good for the fully vaccinated efficacy. But the problem is after 3 months, from 3 months to 4th month, your first dose vaccine efficacy will drop a lot, drop to 30. So the risk of getting COVID in that particular time period is quite high before you get a second shot. So that's the risk. So for the 4 months dosing interval. So what's the best dosing interval timing? I think it's 3 months, because if your interval is 3 months, your efficacy, your antibody after the first dose is still very high, say over 70%, and you can also enjoy the very high fully vaccinated efficacy after that. My personal thinking is the dosing interval say to 3 months, and you will enjoy the very good protection after second dose, and also very good protection after the first dose within that 3 months. All right, so that's today's paper sharing. And if you would like to receive more COVID-19 related paper reviews like these, don't forget to subscribe. Your subscription is really my best encouragement to make more videos like these. Other than that, take care, and I will see you next time.